Good evening. The time is 7 p.m. and I will now call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is the acceptance of tonight's agenda. I do have one change under Section 8, new business. I'd like to add a new item D, which is going to be sidewalk repairs, possible contingency. And then the old D, which is refunds of excess payments, will become E. So
approve the agenda with those changes.
Go ahead. I'll second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. The next item is the approval of minutes from our regular meeting of May 1st. Has everyone been able
Make a motion, we approve them.
I'll second that.
All right, any errors, changes, omissions on those? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Great. All right, we'll move on to communications and correspondence. The first thing I want to note is that you'll notice Selectman Michael Hernandez is not here with us this evening. Michael had unexpected surgery yesterday, and so he is recovering. We wish him well, and we can't wait for him to get back to join us. So he is with us in spirit. He wanted me to make sure I relayed that information, that he's not just blowing us off, I promise. And all right, so next up under communications and correspondence, I wanted to provide an update at our special joint meeting last night. I had mentioned that we had a 14-year-old juvenile male that had been hit by a motor vehicle on Main Street in Portland yesterday evening, approximately 5 o'clock in the evening. That teenager was transported to the Connecticut Children's Medical Center. He is now, I can say, in stable condition with non-life-threatening injuries. He did, unfortunately, he has a broken femur and a pelvis, and he had surgery today. So we wish him a very speedy recovery, and we're very grateful that he is going to be okay, though. So I wanted to provide an update on that. The next item I wanted to update you all on is we did have a resignation. So one of our registrars of voters, Christy Fuller, resigned. I think it was effective over the weekend. And so per state statute, when a registrar resigns, the deputy then becomes the registrar. So I would also like to congratulate Maureen O'Doherty for coming into the role as registrar of voters. And I think we all know Maureen well. She's going to do a fantastic job. She was already hard at work with the budget referendum on Monday. So certainly thank you to Maureen, and also thank you to Christy for her years of service to the town as well. So I wanted to update you all, and I believe that means that the Democratic Town Committee will need to appoint a new deputy.
Our understanding is that the DTC is working with Maureen to find somebody.
Perfect. All right, thank you. All right, and then the next item, and I wanted to put this at the beginning of the meeting again, is my update, which has become regular, on the status of Job's Pond and the flooding of the pond that has been ongoing. So I do have some good news to share with you all. On Thursday of last week, that was May 9th, the town was notified that the program that we had applied for from the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, the NRCS, we applied for what's called an Emergency Watershed Protection Program, and we were accepted into that, meaning that the federal government now is going to cover 75% of the project to de-water Job's Pond. So that's really good news. We're 3/4 of the way to funding the project. Now, NRCS also put the project at $750,000. So to give you an idea, which is actually lower than we had initially anticipated, so that is good news. So the federal government is going to cover $562,500 of this project. The remaining $187,500 is still to be determined. Now, I can tell you, I had a meeting with state officials from DEEP yesterday, as well as Demis, as well as NRCS, as well as town officials, or public works director, or town engineer. There were many, many people on the call yesterday. I believe that the state is looking to see if funds are available from the state to cover that 25% match. We have not received any official word on that, but I am encouraged and I'm grateful. I want to say thank you to DEEP, also Demis and NRCS, and I mean, we had the Deputy Commissioner of DEEP on the call yesterday, and so I really want to thank the state for their attention and making this a priority, which it is, because I was out at Job's Pond this morning. There are now 8 homes that have been, residents have been forced to leave, 8 homes now. And that number is going to grow if we do nothing. And so the water continues to rise, and we are working as fast as I can. I was telling the residents there this morning that as far as state and federal government goes, this is a lightning pace. And I'm very much appreciative for the support that we've received also at the federal level. And so I hope to have more news for you on this, but we're at the point where I am reaching out to property owners to secure access agreements and temporary easements. And there are 3 properties primarily that we're going to need access agreements with, and that is Camp Ingersoll, the YMCA camp, Eversource, who owns the Airline Trail, and then there's one Portland resident, property owner, there's a family in town who got an unexpected phone call from me recently, and they thought they had done something wrong, and I said, no, I want to see if I can run a pipe through your backyard. And they have the culvert that we would be discharging into the Connecticut River with. And so we would need to secure agreements from those 3 groups and owners in order to do this. And so we're talking about pumps in Job's Pond that would be pumping out, depending on what they decide to do, it's either 1 or 2 pumps, and each one can pump out 5,000 gallons a minute. So we're talking a lot of water will be coming out of Job's Pond quickly, which is great. And these pumps would run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I wrote down, how much diesel they burn, and it is just the cost of the project. Each one burns 15 gallons an hour, 360 gallons a day, and then if we ran it for 30 days straight, we'd be talking about 1,100 gallons per pump. So you look at the cost of diesel and you can see why the project costs this much. But we're really encouraged by all the support and the fact that we have a potential solution. I'm told by NRCS that they have 2 potential contractors in place that can do this work, and they plan to reach out to them early next week and set up a walkthrough where both can walk through the route that we would be going and see if they have any questions or ideas, or making sure it works for them. But things are moving along. I will continue to update you every step of the way, and we're closer today than we've ever been. So I think we should all feel encouraged and just grateful for the support that we're getting from our state and federal partners on this.
Two quick questions. Is there any, I would assume there's probably some testing that would have to be done to make sure that they're okay to discharge in case anything has gotten into the pond, right, from a contaminant standpoint. Has that been done, or have we verified if that needs to be done, and is that something they can do while all this other stuff's sort of in parallel, right, so that we can speed it up at that point? In other words, right, get the stuff done in parallel we can. And the second question is that what are we seeing right now in terms of how quickly the water is rising? I know that when we were out there a few weeks ago, it was coming up quick. Is it coming up at the same pace, or is it starting to abate a little bit as we've gotten, less? We're not sitting with quite as much rainfall over the last few weeks. So, curious.
Yeah, honestly, great points. So as far as the water quality goes, I do believe they will have to test the water. One of the fears is that if any of the furnaces had gotten flooded and any oil had been contaminated into the pond, that we wouldn't be able to pump, if that were to happen. So those are things that are going to have to be, we can't pump dirty water into the Connecticut River. So we are going to be looking at that as well. And then as far as the water level goes of Job's Pond, so it did, I was encouraged to hear, I was talking with the residents today, that it had remained flat they even said it went down almost 1/4 of an inch for a day, but then we got more rain. And so the last week, we hadn't had much rain and things were looking somewhat better for them, but it has still risen, and now it started rising about an inch again a day. And so that's where we're at now, but it's tough to predict where we're going to be. But I can tell you the residents who have been there since the last time this happened in 1984 are now all confirming that this is higher than it ever was back in 1984. And it's risen faster than it did in 1984 as well. So those are the problems that we're dealing with out there. And so we can't anticipate that this is going to go away on its own. Unfortunately, it seems like pumping is the only way to solve the problem immediately. And we've also been talking with NRCS about a permanent solution to the problem that we could look at after. And based on the support that we've gotten from our state and our federal leaders, we may be very eligible for funding for a permanent fix. But right now, we got to get this temporary one done. Any other questions on it?
No.
All right, so I hope to have more good news soon, because we got to get these pumps in there. All right. Next up is public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to comment? Oh, there we go. Just name and address, please.
My name is Joe Engel. I live at
Oh,
299.
I'm sorry, Joe, if you could come up to the microphone, I'm sorry.
First time.
Yeah, no, understood.
My name is Joe Engel. I live at 2 Highland Avenue in Portland, the red house right next to the town hall. So the reason that brings me here today, a couple weeks ago, we had some fertilizing that happened at the town property behind the town hall. I spoke to Ryan regarding, I guess, why we fertilize a place like that. I can understand some of the baseball fields because it's high traffic, high, use areas. But for places like that, basically open space, in my opinion, we're putting down a chemical that doesn't need to be applied. We already don't bag the mulchings. We just leave the grass there, which is honestly some of the best fertilizer we can use. And are we looking at other options besides I believe it's the Shaw's Turf Food and Granular, which is what Ryan told me to use. So I did look it up. I printed out the SDS sheets. I also looked up a couple options that are non-petrochemical created. And if you guys are interested in exploring those options, I would give them to you. We're just wondering if we could potentially go down the path of getting away from using fertilizers on our baseball fields, public areas, places where kids, dogs play. So that's basically where.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I'd gladly take a look at that.
Okay. If you want, we can set something up, later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to comment? All right, we'll move on. Is there anyone online that wishes to comment? And there is a second chance for a public comment later in the meeting if you change your mind. So with that, we'll move on to item 7, which is old business. And the first item under old business is our monthly report from the Committee on Solidarity, who have been very busy. So come on up. Well, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Evening, Ryan. Evening, board members. My name is Cynthia Tyler. I live at 15 Scenic Drive. Neighbors. The Committee on Solidarity has been busy. To begin, you've also been busy, so we want to start by thanking you for upping our little budget to be a little bit higher in your budget, so thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. We spent time talking about that in the meeting last night. The last event we told this group about was the Stonewall speakers who came to the library on April 20th. That was an impressive presentation. We had more than 25 attendees. The 3 speakers talked about their lives. They created a kind of somebody used the term safe space. It just felt comfortable, and when we got to the Q&A part, it just looked like people were gonna continue to hang around. The speakers got up, they walked around, they were talking with us. It was just really a nice day. So at some point, we may well do something like that again. Next up is the Pride Work Group. We will be joining Middletown folks in joining their Pride Parade on June 1st. And we spent Saturday making signs and posters and being incredibly witty with each other, and it was nice. We had fun, and we also discovered that Jackie Davis and the library both have amazing numbers of art supplies, so we're already envisioning future projects relying on them. Jackie also gets kudos for being the T-shirt connection. She helped us get Portland Pride T-shirts, which, by the way, will still be available even after the parade. Just let one of us know. But in the course of doing that, it turned out there was some question about whether people would all get their T-shirts in time for the parade. Be kind of silly, get them the day later, whatever. Jackie stepped in and said, deliver them all to me, and I will give them out to people. So then came the issue of, well, everybody's already paid their shipping charges, but we could donate them to Solidarity. We agreed, it was a fine idea, so again, kudos to Jackie on that one. Next up, we are continuing our work on Juneteenth. Posters will start appearing all over the place. The posters are really neat looking, and I think starting tomorrow, we will be officially assigning who's putting them where, but they will be appearing. The celebration will be on June 15th at the Portland Middle School. Going to have bands, singing, games, food, and a treasure hunt. In addition to the Portland schools, the other sponsors are the True Vine Holiness Church of Portland, the Portland Historical Society, the Portland Public Library, Portland Youth and Family Services, Middlesex Habitat for Humanity, Middlesex County NAACP, Liberty Bank, and Gospel Lane Stell Printing. So lots of folks have hands in various parts of that program. We're continuing work on the oral history project with the Portland Historical Society. There's a number of folks working on trying to get some grant money, getting some time to put together a podcast. I mean, it's really sounding like it's going to be exciting, and people are very engaged in that one. And that's all an outgrowth of the Brownstone presentation in February. This has just sort of grown from that. Just a reminder, May is Jewish Heritage Month and Asian American and Pacific Islander Month, and so we are trying to make sure we get the Banner's announcements out on Facebook pages, the Portland page, things like that. Future plans, we're continuing to pursue the social work and law enforcement project. We're sharing, reviewing, and planning, and somehow we may fold this into Juneteenth. There's a report put out by the National Urban League. It's been coming out for about 25 years now, called The State of Black America. It's incredibly interesting, and trying to figure out a way to use it for some outreach, for some discussion in this community. And again, they track, they've only done this since 2005, but they track if 1.0 is, you know, a happy white person, where is the black community on 5 variables that they measure on economics, on healthcare. I can't rattle off the other 5 right now, but it has progressively gone up. There were some lulls, and they are dating this year's report to since the Civil Rights Act in 1964. They're really looking back and saying what's happened in the last 60 years. We are still only at 0.74. So there's definitely room for improvement. So we will fold some aspect of that, if nothing else, trying to recruit folks for a discussion group out of people who attend Juneteenth. And as always, thanks to all of you for your support in all of these activities, and we'll be back.
Thank you.
And I know Michael and myself, that was great. The Stonewall speakers was really great, and looking forward for Juneteenth, and a lot of you guys are busy. You guys are very
Parade?
What day is the parade? I don't.
June 1st.
I don't know if I'm coming to the parade, but I did buy a T-shirt.
I did hear that.
All right. Next up is item B under old business. And this evening, we have a presentation, so our hydrogeologist with GZA is here this evening, and so before we get into that, I just wanted, as you all know, we've been talking about water for quite some time, and the goal has been to be water independent when our contract with MDC expires in January 1 of 2026. As you know, we received a grant from the state to explore finding our own water source, which is how, after we went through the procurement process, we selected GZA, who's done some terrific work in identifying a local water source in town, a potential source that would be able to supply the town for us to become water independent. And so that preliminary work has been completed, and I think there's some big decisions that this board is going to have to make very soon, because time is of the essence with all of this. And so one, I thought it would be very helpful if Rich came tonight to update the board on what's been done, but also talk about what we're going to need to do if we're going to be successful in this. So I didn't know if Ryan, did you want to come up first? So Ryan O'Halpin, our Public Works Director, is going to come up before Rich and just kind of lay the groundwork on where we're at, I think. So thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. All right, so in your packets, there should be a sheet titled Portland MDC Usage Summary 2022-2023 Averages. So what I wanted to do was fill the board in on kind of where the numbers lay with MDC for the past couple of years, and then potentially where they're going to go. If we do not put in a well, this is kind of if MDC gets what they want. But I'll run through it, and then if you guys have any questions, let me know. So right now, set in 1996, the contract minimum is 400,000 gallons per day, or 146 million gallons per year. And over the course of 2023, we actually ended up not getting to our minimum last year, and we were charged the extra 5 million gallons that we were short in 2023, which ended up totaling $771,000. In 2022, there was a drought, so we ended up going over on our MDC usage because we could not run our well for a couple months, and we ended up buying 148 million gallons in 2022 for a total of $840,000. Now, we have a diversion permit, so the average usage with the 140 and the 148 million gallons, if you go down to the the third table, we have averages per day for MDC and our well. For 2023, we averaged 384,000 gallons a day from MDC and 273,000 from our well, while we're permitted for 1.1 million gallons from MDC and 648,000 gallons per day from our well. So there's a surplus of right near 700,000 from MDC, and then a surplus of 374,000 gallons from our well. Now, in conversations with MDC, this is a big point for them, is the 700,000 gallons that is a surplus. They want us to buy it, or they want to be able to lower our permitted average and sell it to someone else. Now, there's an issue with both. The first issue being, I put August of 2022 box. It'll be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th box down. It says August 2022 MDC usage, and we used 25.7 million gallons that month for an average of 858,000 gallons per day out of the 1.1 million that we're permitted for, with only a surplus of 240,000. The reason that's important is in August of 2022 we were in a drought and could not run our well. So we were totally reliant on MDC. This is taking all the water from MDC, but if we were to lower that 1.1 million gallons, we'd potentially be in trouble with any expansion of our system. We're pretty tight on that number right there. There were several days where we went over 1 million gallons in that month of August, 5 days to be exact. I did look it up. And yeah, the number's tight. So without being able to lower like they want so they could sell the water to someone else, we potentially are at a point where who knows with the negotiation how it's going to go, but if it goes their way, the last 2 boxes I put down here explain what in the last 2 years, if we had to buy all our water from MDC, in 2023 it would have cost us $496,000 more, and in 2022 it would be $609,000 more. Now that's at the rates that we were paying over the last 2 years. So if there's an increase in rates, that also increases. MDC has also discussed charging non-sewer users a surcharge of sorts to help pay for the losses that they're experiencing with their sewer department and to take the burden off of the sewer users in Glastonbury, because they're having issues at the plant there. They need big upgrades. So they're looking to supplement costs to the water users for the sewer up there, which would hit Portland. And they did let us know about this. I don't know why they let us know about it so early, but they did. So thank you to them for giving us the heads up on that. But that would have significant cost implications on top of a possible rate increase, on top of a possible minimum water usage. So there's a lot of possible big hits coming with the contract negotiation. I don't believe they're open to keeping the minimum the same as it is. That's in conversations in meetings and on the phone, that's what's relayed. It's either raise the minimum, lower the permitted value. Maybe there's an in-between there, but it doesn't, it's going to cost one way or another. We don't end up on the winning side, I don't think. So I did want to go through that before we go through the numbers. GZA is proposed with the schedule for putting in a new well. Do you guys have any questions on the MDC sheet at all?
I don't.
I think it makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. So I'll start real quick before Rich comes up and just kind of show how this sheet progresses. I highlighted everything yellow that's been completed to date, which is finding the water source, doing the test wells, and submitting the preliminary engineering report. We also funded in March and submitted in April the well site suitability certification, and DPH is currently going through that. I did get an email from them today that they expect within 30 days to have a response to approve the location of the well, but there are further phases that are going, they couldn't give me a timeline on, where they're looking into the geology in the area and certain other things that will make us more confident about the location. So that it is being worked on. If we end up getting an approval on that site, we should be pretty confident that we picked a good location. Outside of that, we see in May of 2024 there's a couple of not highlighted items for $5,000 and $15,000 to submit permit applications for well construction, and then submitting well construction and pumping test plan to DEP and DPH. The reason that's in May is that's also going to take months to go through, and in that time frame we would also like to be able to possibly look for contractors to drill later this year, which then the costs go very far up. And I'll have Rich come up and get more into this.
Ryan, can I ask one question before?
Sure.
With what we're buying from MDC and using off our town well now, how much of that are we losing that's not being metered to customers?
It's around, last year, it was as high as 38%. But the past 2 or 3 quarters, it's been 24%. So there were several large leaks in the system that I think we've found, and we're able to lower that number substantially.
Okay.
So we're down around 24, 25% right now.
Do we have any more ideas where big projects would lower that even more?
So later this year, I am having mandated, per the interconnection permit actually, to do a full system-wide leak detection, which we had funded on the capital, the water capital for this upcoming fiscal year. So I am going to be hiring someone, do a full system-wide leak detection, and that'll honestly tell us where we should go next.
Okay.
So I think that'll be helpful. All right, give it to you, Rich.
Ryan. Rich DeRozier with GZA. Thank you for having us here this evening to discuss the water well project. I think Ryan laid out, I think, probably the financial burden that the town is looking at, and what I'm here to do is just basically answer your questions in terms of how this is going to proceed, give you some insights in terms of why we think some of these things need to be initiated, probably ahead of state revolving fund monies in order to reach your goal, as First Selectman Brian Curley indicated, of January 2026. So with the well, the good news is we did find a very high yielding well on the recreation facility on top of the hill. And the water quality there was exceptional, which is always good news in terms of finding water that has very minimal contaminants in it, actually very low issues related to that, and then finding the yields that we found. So we put 2 test wells in. The first one we drilled down to about 330 feet. We drilled through some fill, which is obviously on the hill. Then we went through about 140 or 160 feet worth of fine grain material, silts and clays, and I'll get into the rationale of that in a minute. We went through some sands, back into some additional sand and gravels, some silts with clay units, and then finally into a sand and gravel deposits. And we did a pump test on that one, and the estimated yield is sort of between 1 and 2 million gallons a day. And we did the pump test, and we did the water quality, and again, that water quality was very good. We drilled a second well in the shallower formation above that lower silt and clay unit, in that lower above the production zone. That well we screened, we're estimating that one to yield about 500,000 gallons a day. The water quality there was still good, but we did detect some contaminants in that well, and therefore the lower one seems to be the more favorable location. So what we're proposing and what we assisted Ryan on in terms of the well siting application was really to discuss with DPH one of the issues that they will have, and that is groundwater under the influence. Is the well going to pump surface water? And if it does, that becomes problematic with the state of Connecticut. There are some testing that can be done to see if there's an interconnection between the groundwater and the surface water. But as I indicated initially, and the reason why I was talking about that silt unit that's about 140 plus feet thick, is that is really acting as a confining or a semi-confining layer where the water is being drawn out of the lower aquifer and unlikely to be drawn from the upper aquifer. And the fact that we would be screening this well basically 297 feet down probably 40 feet into the formation where the sand and gravels are. That would be the proposed target area for the drilling and installation of that well. The shallower well, because of the water quality, we're recommending to target the deeper zone where the better water quality is. And it has two buffers. One is the upper 140-foot unit, and then we had that other sand, silt, and clay unit, which is a secondary protective to make sure that water is not being drawn down from the surface water. And we know that the adjacent wetland is influenced by the Connecticut River during flooding periods along Carbrook. So obviously, the state is going to be looking at that carefully from the siting standpoint to make sure that the water that's being drawn from a municipal standpoint isn't going to be influenced by surface water. So that's one thing that I think they're going to be looking at to evaluate. So once we now have the well completed and we understand where the water would be drawn from, the next steps in the process are to submit a plan, a pre-diversion plan, in terms of how we would move forward. What would the well be constructed, how it would be constructed, how we would run pumping tests so that they can approve that. Because the town doesn't want to go out and spend money without understanding that the plan that's proposed is going to work. And again, we believe that we would develop an appropriate plan, but it's the state's obligation to make sure that that plan can be fulfilled and it would be sufficient to determine the water quality. That plan would also identify a number of monitoring wells that would have to be installed. What we're looking for is when the well goes on, the groundwater is going to get drawn down. So we want to look at that drawdown at the water table, which would be basically, is there influence from surface water? Is there any groundwater coming down that's near the surface water area, which is going to be about 40 feet below grade? And then we'd end up putting deeper wells in to make sure how the water is being drawn down, and then how far out. Because the analysis that we run, just on a simple, it's distance drawdown. So the further you're away, the less the drawdown is going to be in the well. So you sort of have a cone that comes in like a funnel. And so that water on the outside is the limits as to where the water is going to be drawn in. At the end of the day, we would have to develop an aquifer protection zone, similar to what you have on your well currently at DPW. So we would have to define that limit, and that limit would have to be restricted and approved with the state of Connecticut under a level A mapping to define what is that aquifer protection zone. So this plan is that start of developing that whole process so that the state understands how the well will be installed, how we're going to monitor the drawdown in that well, what kind of pump we're going to put in, how many gallons a minute that we're proposing. And you mentioned a lot of water coming out of the pond, Jobs Pond. We would be proposing about 1,000 gallons a minute. Would be the theoretical concept in terms of having a pump down there to run a long-term pumping test. So that would be outlined in this plan. So really, on the onset, that whole process needs to get going so that we can develop a contractor to go out and install the well. And the reason for that is as everybody's well aware, a lot of businesses are very busy. One of the busiest industry is well drillers. I don't know if anybody's tried to get a well driller, but they're almost impossible to get. And they're scheduling out months in advance. The other problem that we have is there's not a lot of well drillers that can drill the depth that we're talking about. So we've met already with a number of well drillers in the state of Connecticut. We have one right now that may be able to install the well at the 330-foot depth. We did get a bid in order to compile the data in terms of the preliminary cost estimate. That driller is out of New York State, and we need special drilling equipment. So to get the well down to 330, 340 feet deep, we need to go out and select well drillers that are in upstate New York, down in New Jersey, in Connecticut. We've also talked with drillers in Massachusetts who have the right equipment, but they do not have a well driller's permit license in Connecticut. So we can't bring them in to work under a well driller's license in Connecticut, but we're trying to see if we can't work something out. So you start seeing that there are some limitations down the road in order to install this well. So we're looking at probably 2 to 4 months out to be able to get a driller. To get that driller, we need this plan in order to put in front of the state in terms of how we're gonna construct the well, the screen size, the opening of the screen, referred to as a slot size of the well screen itself, what type of material such as stainless steel, what is the material that's going to be put in above that, how we're going to seal that well, and how we're going to make sure that we can identify that there is or is no connectivity to surface water. So as we go through on the information you have, you start seeing the $5,000 and the $15,000 items below the yellow. That's needed before we can go out and start looking at installing the larger production well. And again, because of the specialty and the depth, that's a very expensive well. It's not the residential wells at $20,000 or $30,000. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to install that well, and weeks, if not a month or so, to get that done. And then once we have that done, obviously we're looking at specialty pumps that have to be put in place. The equipment, the state's going to require a minimum of 72 hours of pumping so that we can sustain that. Our pump test was a short pump test. We did about 6 to 8 hours, and we had very little drawdown, but again, we were only pumping at 34 gallons a minute to evaluate the specific capacity of the well. And so, as you can see, as we go down, we have surveys, engineering, design, and permit, which is incorporated in these things, and all of these things are required so that we can move into the design of the treatment building, and then also from the construction of the pump house and how we're going to lay it out in terms of having potentially minimal treatment at the pump house, at least chlorination, and those are the type of things that we're looking at. So we're looking at a hard deadline, as Ryan's pointing out, a potential future cost. Selectman Curley's indicating that we have a deadline of January 2026. So we have a sort of a compressed time frame that we need to get things done. And so we're just here to outline those things and answer questions.
I just have one question. What's the overall diameter of the casing for this well?
The well itself will be 12 inches.
Okay.
So as we install the well,
Right.
that's a different question, but it's also an interesting question. So at the bottom, the steel is going to go in at 12 inches. And then we do something called telescope drilling. So on top, we're likely to be somewhere between 18 and 22 inches to go down.
Okay.
The pipe itself, as you're drilling, if you think about all the soils, they sort of coalesce around the pipe.
Right.
And so it makes the pipe difficult to go in. So we can only go down so far with a big diameter. Then we reduce that diameter to 18, we drill that down to depth, and then we'll install the 12-inch well itself inside the 18-inch casing.
Okay.
So all of that's what we need to have in the plan.
With the deadline of January 2026, is all of this possible?
I never say anything's impossible. I think a lot of it, we need cooperation with DPH. As Ryan indicated, they're looking, I think they've had the application now for at least 30 days. Yeah. They're indicating another 30 days to get site approval, and they still want to look at some additional geology and hydrogeology. Again, when we looked at, placing of the well, we also looked at other properties within Portland, to the north, the sand and gravel, Portland sand and gravel, all the way down to the YMCA, with properties in between. The good news is that this aquifer runs up and down the central portion of Portland. The Portland Golf Course has their well within the same, highly production zone, which is indicated by their high-yielding well that they have. So the good news is there's a lot of potential for water within the town of Portland, within these old glacial deposits where the former Connecticut River resided, 10,000 years or so ago. So that's the good news. The tough news is that we have to drill deep in order to get the high-yielding water and be able to demonstrate that we're not going to have any interconnectivity to the surface water.
So, Rich, just so the board understands then, so we would have to drill the well, and then we would then test to see if it is impacted by surface water, right?
That is correct.
So, just so the board knows, we would be potentially spending $2 million, we're talking overall, right? Before we, and there is a possibility that if it is influenced, if the well is influenced by surface water, it would most likely become cost prohibitive because of the excess costs that it would cost the town to build a suitable treatment facility for that.
That's correct. There would be a substantial cost related to that.
Would it be considered rare for a well that deep to be affected by surface water?
I think in our experience it would be.
Especially, I think, looking at the geological, the barrier, right? Having over 100 foot of clay line in there is, and the fact that I think there's another thing that I know in our conversations we've talked about is having 2 strata of water with different qualities. Right, indicates you've got some isolation.
So we're playing beat the clock in effect for January 2026, right, to be able to get it all done.
Yes.
How does MDC, how would they handle us maybe not making the deadline or transitioning? Are they flexible? Do they understand? Would they want a contract signed before then?
So my thoughts are,
pass off the baton?
MDC wants to start formal negotiations later this year. If we have this in progress, it puts us in a better spot than if we don't have this in progress, because we can negotiate based on this well going in. And obviously, we're going to find out as things are progressing from DPH, from feedback from DEP, if things are moving in a positive or a negative direction. So I think as long as things are progressing in a positive direction, I think MDC is going to have to try and keep selling us at least the water that they're selling us now, and puts us in a spot to, obviously I think lawyers are going to have to be involved in this process, but possibly we don't sign the contract. I don't think they could just shut our water off. If we're this close to putting a well online and they don't have a contract that we want to sign at the time. Obviously, a lot needs to happen between then and now, but that's the way I look at it. As long as this is working in a positive direction, I think we hold a lot of the cards, even if things don't come together for exactly January of 26, it could be June of 26 that it's all going to come together, as long as we're somewhere in that time frame.
Along that path.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think we also have, and correct me on, just looking at, in this case, rough numbers, having our own water source, when you look at the fact that we currently spend with MDC, close to $800,000 a year, we're probably going to save, by having our own water source, about $600,000 a year that can be used for things like if we have to pay off any kind of a bond or any costs, right, associated with implementing it. That's today, because we'll be able to operate, our operating costs are going to go down. Add on to that, their MDC is currently looking at, from a negotiating standpoint, wanting us to buy enough water that would actually drive that cost up another $500,000 a year. I think when we, like the rough numbers, we were calculating like $481,000 or somewhere around, just looking at the numbers. I think they wanted us to go to 650,000 gallons a day versus 400,000 gallons a day. So there's definitely some, the smaller risk, right? But there's a huge risk if we don't get this in motion, in terms of how this will impact our ratepayers. I was looking at this, you'd probably be looking at somewhere between, to accommodate what MDC would be looking to do, notwithstanding any other rate increases and notwithstanding anything to do with sewer, you'd probably be looking at about a 25% rate increase, just in, if we had to stop buying all of our water, because our water costs would go up significantly.
I have one question, Ryan. I don't know if you have it or Rich, you have it. Do you have a cross-section diagram of what levels you saw the clays and that you could share with us?
Not a pretty cross-section.
That's just something I just want to take a look at.
But it's in the report that we provided at the bottom there. You can sort of, we highlighted in different colors, but you can sort of see where the different geologic stratum come in and out. And the importance, I think, as you brought up, is that we have two layers that we believe are, and consistent with you have, will be protective of, the surface water being drawn down. The water table at this well is approximately 40 feet below grade, which is consistent with the wetlands on the adjacent portion. So that means that, surface water is going to have to go from 40 feet down to 297 feet. So we're have to draw an awful lot of water down versus trying to draw that water in from that lower aquifer. And usually, once you start getting these boundary conditions or confining or semi-confining layers, you're drawing water horizontally and not necessarily vertically. And so we're looking to draw that water horizontally.
With the new well, how does the water quality compare to our existing well? Is it, minimal treatment that we have to do to it?
I sent this data, if you remember, we were here before. I had Jamie Emery on the screen with me from our New Hampshire office, who's done thousands of these. When I sent it to him, he said, that's some of the best water quality I've seen in a long time. I'd be willing to put a cup underneath the spigot and drink from it. The water quality there is really good. There's no volatile organics, there's no inorganics. The nitrates, I think, were like 2 milligrams per liter, so very low. The good news also on these emerging contaminants, these PFAS that you might have heard about, those were non-detect in the lower zone. There was a trace level in the shallower well. So again, you can start seeing there's a segregation. It hasn't migrated down that far. But again, from a treatment standpoint, we're looking at a very minimal amount of treatment. Our associate Hazen and Sawyer looked at that in the report in terms of, I think we may have to add some material in for corrosion because MDC is also sending that through their water mains, so we'd want to stay consistent with that. And the only other thing that's being considered right now, based upon the water quality test, is chlorination. So again, a simple type of treatment system without a lot of bells and whistles, and also keeping the cost down. Not only for the construction, but for the operation and maintenance in terms of the long term.
Just 2 quick questions. In order to have the well drilled and get the test to see if it's pulling from surface water, when would that realistically take place? If everything was realistically with problems that might come up then?
That's a perfect question.
Right.
And I didn't mention that earlier, and I wanted to get it in, but thank you for the question. Typically, the way the state likes to see it is during a low flow condition, which is usually the fall of the year, August, September, October. So ideally, what we'd like to be able to do is install the well late summer, so that we set up during the quote-unquote droughtier season, even though we've had these massive rainstorms and another one coming up the coast tonight. So we'd want to be able to do the testing this year, because if we postpone it, then we're looking at doing the testing likely in the fall of 2025 with the negotiation of January 2026 right around the corner.
So the end of this year,
Yes.
November, December, ideally, okay.
Yep.
Second question, I guess, is either Ryan or the cost of this thing is about $2 million. Are we looking at bonding? Are we looking at contingency? How are we going to pay for this to get it done?
Well, I'll just talk a little bit about that first. Well, one, I think part of the reason why we wanted Rich and Ryan to come and attend tonight and provide this update was to brief you all on where we're at and what needs to happen. And then a conversation has to be made by this board to see, is this worth pursuing? And I think Jim made some excellent points earlier. I think that Ryan made some great points. Is from a negotiating standpoint with MDC, if we don't have another option, it really does put us at a weaker negotiating position. And so this is a decision for this board. This is not currently funded. We don't have funding in place for this. And so if we, knowing that we have to move quickly, we'll have to come up with options and present that to you all. I don't have a solution today. I know that Ryan and I have been applying for every funding opportunity possible. And some of them have not panned out yet, and some of them we're waiting to hear. But we're working on that. And I don't have an answer as to funding yet, but if the direction of this board is that this is the path that you would like us to pursue, we will continue that and then present you with options.
So I would like to touch on that as well. The more immediate items, if you look at the sheet I gave you, so going from May of '24 down to December of 2024, the conduct 72-hour and 5-day pumping test, that would be, I believe, everything that we would want to get funded sooner than later, which is right around, call it 1.1 or 1.2 million dollars. And that the reason being so we can start looking for a contractor. We could get a project manager hired. We can get these well applications, the construction application, the pumping test plan to DEP. That needs to happen very soon. And then obviously getting contractors on board and letting them know that, hey, because it's gonna be 3 months. If we give someone notification, say in June, and it's possible we'll see them in September. Where if we don't notify them until July or August, they might say we have the rest of the year booked. So that would be the reason why we'd want to include those things. And then I think we wait and see if we're going to get any help through DWSRF or we applied to federal grants. We've applied through the state. So we'll see if anyone comes back with any kind of help for us at that point, and then see what our options are, for mixing the funding after that. But at least get the ball rolling and gets the work started this year.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
With the old well, if this well came online, would we not use the old well anymore and just keep it as a backup, or would it be decommissioned?
We'd probably look into over-drilling the site, see what our options are. Obviously, that's hinging on us finding 1.1 or 1.2 million gallons a day. Then our well is redundant. Yeah, we look into the long run if we want to keep our well there. If we want to, we'd have options.
Yeah.
I haven't even thought that far ahead. Right now, that well, it's pumping good. It's still running good. So.
What does that produce at maximum?
The max I've seen is like 600,000 gallons.
One of the things we've been talking about too, Bob, a lot, both when I was chairing water and sewer and even conversations we've been having with this, is resiliency, right? If we're going alone, we want to make sure we do things like having that resiliency built in where we already have the well there, but also looking at opportunities where we can complete loops with piping, things of that nature. So you've got multiple paths to keep people in service. So, so having that second well in place, especially where it's still performing and good quality, will provide that.
And if I may add in, during our geologic and geophysical evaluation, we did screen that area where that well is, and it appears that there may be deeper deposits. So if that well could be drilled deeper, further evaluations, then the issue that you have during the summertime where you're drawing down to a lower level, You know, if we could drill that another, 20, 50 feet deeper, then that becomes more of a sustainable secondary well for your resiliency.
What's that well at now, the depth?
66 feet.
Very
Low.
low.
Very shallow.
My other question, if, or when this comes online, will this all be town managed? So we would have a bigger water department than what we have now?
Correct, yeah. One of the benefits would be possibly not, re-signing with MDC or signing a minimal usage contract, and that would free up a lot of funding without even raising rates. Depending on what the note is for the bond that we end up having to pull, if we did that, see obviously how the budget shakes out, but that would be the idea, to hire at least 1, 2, 3 more people and be able to start putting water lines in ourselves again.
Ryan, yes, real quick, I'm sorry. So, again, we're playing beat the clock. It's doable. You never say it's impossible. But does that give you realistically enough time to lower the leakage rate in the system from 24 to 15? Like, is that gonna also be to our advantage as you find that? And will the cost of that be expensive or not? Like, how do you see that savings at that end?
So if we did have our own personnel, we could use, the leak detection that we're going to run later this year, that report, and have a town crew go, hey, Prout Street, I know we have issues over there. That one we have found, if we replace that, we're going to eliminate, the possibility of leaks, just we can highlight roads and try and get certain projects done each year is the way I envision it. On top of that, otherwise, we have guys that can do maintenance, replace valves, update our equipment,
I just think
a number of things that we haven't been able to do.
Yeah, I think as Jim said, it kind of adds resilience to it, right? If we can make it more efficient as well as, find enough water to keep us going.
Yeah.
Makes us self-sufficient, independent.
Yeah, it gives us a whole lot of options, and it would be it'd be a really positive thing. I'd feel really good about it. Yeah.
Ryan, do you have any idea, gallon-wise or usage-wise, the impact that Brainerd Place is gonna have?
Yeah,
on the water supply?
it's going to be about 45,000 gallons per day, as proposed right now. If the proposed changes go through, it would be upwards of 60,000 gallons per day, and basically all of the usage would actually be for water and sewer. For the most part, there wouldn't be any lawn irrigation. No one's washing cars, so.
What would that, under the current MDC plan, what would that add to our, just guesstimate, add to our annual MDC bill with that additional water?
Well, as is, the minimum wouldn't change. We'd just end up pumping more out of our well, most likely. So it wouldn't change much right now, as is, unless
More revenue.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be more revenue for us.
Correct.
That'd be the big thing.
Yeah,
We
it's-
like customers.
Well, actually, I mean, a lot of the home building goes on in septic and their own well areas. This is the first we've had in a long time that's actually downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's not only that, there is the Nordic Spa that's gonna go in, and that's, I haven't seen expected flow rates over there, but they do have many pools that I assume they're gonna need to constantly filter and replace the water. And they do have quite the sewer system planned for that site. So that is all water and sewer income as well. So I'm expecting something decent over there as well. So a lot of positive things, possibly.
So just as far as this board goes, in order to get the 1.1, 1.2, realistically, what's this board's deadline to get those funds in place?
I would say looking at this schedule, if we're trying to meet this schedule, we're in need of that 20,000 right away, and then the rest of it, June, July, maybe July. I don't know. What do you think, Rich? What are our odds of of being able to sign a driller for the fall,
Yeah.
if we don't have funding until July. Yeah, you could probably speak to that, having conversations
Yeah, well,
with the
talk-
contractors.
talking with at least 2 drillers that I know would be willing to come down and drill. One, they would probably want to rebid this, so we'd have to give them what we're proposing in the design phase that we have to submit to the state. But getting a quote out of a driller, we're probably 3 to 6 weeks. We have another driller here in the state of Connecticut. They're working very hard to, keep their costs reasonable. And I think they can probably do the job. The thing is that not only would we need the 20,000, but we'd also have to start looking at, sending information out to drillers, so there'll be some additional ancillary cost associated with, securing a drilling, telling them that we're getting on board. I would even go to the extent of saying, let's get a date with the driller. We can always cancel a date with the driller. We can't come down the road and say, well, let's drill now, and then we have to wait 3 months. So if we can secure a driller in June for maybe late July, or say August or September, get him on board, and then in that interim process, we have the other financing in place, so that when the contract came in and they went out to drill, then payments can be made.
So, Rich, that would, I guess, just looking at that from a timeline, you indicated a little while ago that from a state standpoint, they really want to see us do these in the more of the drought months, right?
Correct.
That time of the year. If we somehow missed that window, are we going to have to wait until the drought months again? Or will they accept the results if they're earlier? In other words, to me, I'm getting a sense it's really critical we hit that window, especially because we don't want anything to hold up the process when it goes in for us to get this thing permitted, right? We don't want to have any extra questions or say, we need additional testing or anything like that.
There's something called on a river 7Q10, so it's the low flow condition of a river. And that's really what the state is looking for. So we've got to set up gauges on the streams, Carr Brook, and look and see if there's any draw down on that. But they really want it done during low flow conditions, because if we have a lot of recharge, then the influence on the pump is going to be negligible. So they want to be able to see that we're really in the droughty conditions, which is in the, October timeframe. So really, realistically, we'd like to be able to get the well drilled, sort of no later than, September 30th, so that we can then secure what we need for the pumping test. And for the pumping test, we're going to have to discharge that water away from the well. So think about 1,000 gallons a minute coming out of a pipe. We're probably going to have to take that water all the way over to Route 17 in Carr Brook, where the culvert is underneath Route 17, and pipe it all the way over there so that we can discharge it away from that wetland, because we're going to be putting monitoring wells in. And if we tell the state, hey, we're going to put 1,000 gallons a minute in the wetlands, and the wetlands come up and there's no impact, they're going to basically say, Rich, what are you trying to pull? So we got to get the water out of the region where the drawdown is expected. We need to not only install the wells, but again, we're talking weeks to install the monitoring wells, because now we got to get monitoring wells down 300 feet. Those are going to be 2-inch diameter wells, and we need to get them surveyed, and then we need to bring in pressure transducers so we can install those within the wells so that we can gauge when we turn the pumps on. So there's a lot of upfront activities that need to go on. There's securing of different equipment. We'll need to bring in a vendor who's going to have a portable generator to run that, 100 horsepower pump down the well to produce that 1,000 gallons a minute.
So the window is basically late enough to meet the low flow conditions, but early enough to give us enough time to do everything that has to happen on the back end of getting it.
That's
Okay.
correct. And then what you're looking at in 2025, there you're looking to secure the level A mapping, the aquifer protection zones, the diversion permit. In other words, the state has to approve a diversion permit before you can put the well online, because they're going to have to say, well, you're gonna be allowed X gallons a minute, sort of like your existing well. And then, of course, there's the construction for the treatment plant and the time frame to secure equipment. We all know that after COVID, we can't get equipment that we want right away. The lead time on those is becoming, months. So all of that has to be considered in 2025.
So, what we'll do, because I think that it's pretty much unanimous on this board, that we should proceed with exploring how we would fund this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Provide this board with options as far as funding very quickly. And we'll be revisiting this as soon as Ryan, myself, and Tom Robinson work out a plan that we'll be able to move this forward. Does that sound good with everyone?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Rich or Ryan while they're here?
I just have one question. With, what is the projection for, protection around the well? We have a lot of open land near it, and would the well affect future development of stuff?
The wellhead protection is going to be 2 levels. One, pulling out at a high level, is 200 feet from the well, but the aquifer protection zone that's going to limit, types of development in those is yet to be defined. So if you look at the aquifer protection zone that you have around your well, it goes to the south Carr Brook, up the hill to where the bedrock is, to the east, over across the street, where the old theater used to be. So it's a fairly large area. I would expect that this area would, also include the Carr Brook. As you go towards the open fields that you have, the conservation land to the east, bedrock starts to go up there. And so I would expect that we would have a defining limit up to the east. To the west, again, that's probably going to go across the street towards the driving range, and probably under, a good portion of the recreational facility. The issues that the state's going to have is that in a certain portion of that, especially within the 200-foot radius, there'll be restrictions, such as nutrients for fertilizers, those type of things that the town is going to have to understand is going to be prohibited to a certain extent in terms of applying, in the baseball field.
Well, that's a big question, is across 17 where the fields are that are currently farmed.
Yes.
Is that going to affect what he can put down for fertilizer in his fields?
Again, let's get the limits to how far out it goes, and all of that's going to be based upon those monitoring wells that we put in to see what that cone of influence, that funnel, looks like.
Okay.
It's possible it doesn't if it's only the 200-foot area that they're concerned about controlling. And that's usually what it is. It's usually 200 feet surrounding the whole area that the town has complete control as to what goes on in that area. And outside of that, they limit it. We wouldn't have a developer come in and put a mini mall there with a big well or a gas station there. But you'd probably be able to develop it to a certain point. Fertilizers, yeah, I'm not sure. That's a good question.
Okay.
But it is outside the 200 feet.
All right.
Thank you.
We're good.
Yeah, thank you, Rich.
Thanks,
and-
guys.
And thank you, Ryan.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Rich.
Ryan's
Thanks, Ryan.
become an expert on this as well. So,
And I want to say, Joe's comments were right on the money based upon this conversation we just had.
Wasn't planned like that.
Well done.
That's good. I didn't, Joe, I couldn't see you. I thought you had left. I'm glad you were here to hear that. That's good. All right, so we'll move on from this to next up under old business is appointments and reappointments to boards and commissions. Are there any appointments this evening?
We don't have any.
Nope, nothing here.
All right, we can move on then to new business. So number 8 tonight is new business. Item A under new business is setting the mill rate for fiscal year 2024 to 2025. So I want to thank everyone who came out to the polls on Monday of this week. We had our annual budget referendum, which was successful. So again, I want to thank this board for their work as well as the Board of Education, and certainly our finance director, Tom Robinson, for his work on this as well. So it's good that we can get this budget passed and we can start our fiscal year, our new fiscal year, in a positive manner. So in your packets, the green packet is the resolution to adopt the mill rate for fiscal year 2025. Would someone like to move?
I'll move the resolution.
Thank you, Sean.
Resolution, Board of Selectmen, Town of Portland, Connecticut, May 15th, 2024, adoption of the mill rate for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. Whereas the 2024-2025 budget for the Town of Portland estimates that $4,925,888 will be received from the state of Connecticut, and without this, the mill rate would be 40.19 mils. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mill rate for the fiscal year 2024-2025 be and is hereby set at 34.30 mils for all taxes due other than motor vehicle, due and payable on July 1st, 2024 and January 1st, 2025. And be it further resolved that the mill rate for the fiscal year 2024-2025 be and is hereby set at the state cap of 32.46 mils for motor vehicles, due and payable on July 1st, 2024.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on this? I'll call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. The next item is our adoption of the non-union administrative pay plan for 2024 to 2025. That is your gray packet this year. And so with the adoption of, or the approval of the budget, we always will then approve the non-union administrative pay plan for the next fiscal year 2024 to 2025. So if you want to take a look and look through that.
Ryan, I just have one question on it.
Sure.
At the bottom of the first page, it says grounds maintenance crew leader.
Yes.
They get paid $4.46 an hour.
We pay 10% of that, right? It's 10%, Ryan?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
the Board of Education covers the other 90%. Yeah, that would be less than minimum wage.
Yeah.
Significant. So, if there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move it. Resolution, Board of Selectmen, Town of Portland, Connecticut, dated May 15, 2024, non-union administrative pay plan for fiscal year 2024-2025. Resolved that the 2024-2025 pay plan for non-union part-time specialists, seasonal employees, administrative, professional, executive, and elected officials as outlined on the attached be and is hereby adopted.
I'll second that.
All right, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. Next up is the adoption of other budgets. So as our general fund budget was approved at referendum, this board also needs to adopt the other operating budgets for the town of Portland. This includes the Animal Control Fund, Town Aid Road Fund, Youth Services Fund, Resource Recovery Fund, Building Maintenance Fund, and the Parks and Recreation Fund. So this is another one of our annual duties once the budget passes, and these are all the items and the budgets that we went over throughout the budget process, so.
I'll make the motion.
Okay?
All right, so I make a motion that we adopt the resolution dated May 15th, 2024, titled adoption of other operating budgets for the fiscal year 2024-2025. Resolved that the other operating budgets for the fiscal year 2024-2025 as listed below and further outlined on the attached be hereby adopted. Animal Control Fund, $104,962. Town Aid Road Fund, $239,813. Youth Services Fund, $142,295. Resource Recovery Fund, $410,945. Building Maintenance Fund, $82,000. Parks and Recreation Fund, $548,060. Be it further resolved that the capital improvement budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025 as outlined on the attached in the amount of $1,276,827, with $516,500 being town source funded projects, $250,000 water source funded projects, and $380,000 sewer source funded projects, and $130,327 State of Connecticut funded projects be and is hereby adopted.
I'll second that.
Thank you both. Any discussion on this?
Nope.
All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up, under new business is item D. This is sidewalk repairs contingency. And so Ryan O'Halpin is here again. We, as you know, have a sidewalk project that is just about to get started on Main Street. We're really excited about that. That's funded through a STEEP grant. And while the contractor is performing the work, we have two problem areas on existing sidewalks in town that the town has done that has caused some drainage problems with homeowners. So while this project is underway on Main Street, we are able to potentially utilize contingency funds and get this contractor at a really good rate to fix two of these existing and known problems in town. And I don't know, anything else I should add to that, Ryan, or? Yeah, if you don't mind just coming up and.
I just had a question.
And that's in your packet, it's the.
So one of these locations on Freestone, I did witness last week the driveway apron was put in flat so that the water coming down Freestone actually ended up in the driveway and then ran down the driveway to the garage and then ended up puddling down there, you know, which could cause issues, especially in the winter time with freezing. So it would be a good thing to get fixed. Yeah, some of these things are just, you know, minor oversights. I would say when the sidewalks were going in, when you see it in a normal rain event, there's no issues. But with the excessive rains, especially over the last year, you see these issues more and more.
And there's no way we can go back on the original contractor that did
Freestone,
these?
I think, is 5 years ago, and then
Okay.
Fairview, I think, is 2 or 3 years ago. And honestly, I don't think the contractors really installed it wrong, so to say. I think it
Okay.
was just oversight as to how the water was flowing in the area. I think the contractor probably did what they were told. The one area on Fairview, it was an area where a sidewalk was put down to a swale between two properties. So if you didn't know that that is made that way for the water to run off, it kind of made like a hump in the sidewalk, so it wouldn't be exactly smooth. So you would think, all right, I'm going to smooth it out. That'll be a good thing. Smoothing it out caused the water to run a little further and now onto the front lawn and the front walkway for the resident here, which could cause damage to the walkway and is dumping water out onto the front lawn where it used to go into a nice swale and right down between the properties, and you wouldn't even see it. So, yeah, it's something that just unfortunately wasn't caught right away. It probably, wasn't raining while they were doing the contract. It probably wasn't noticed for months or maybe even a year after that it was an issue.
So you definitely saw them and you realized there was a problem. I think.
I say we own it.
Yep, that's what I was just gonna say.
So if we wanted to fund both of these, combined, the total is $13,585. So if the board is inclined to do this, I would entertain a motion to utilize up to $14,000 of town contingency funds.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
It's good for us to take care of it.
For the restoration.
For restoration of
Restoration of
sidewalks
sidewalks.
at Freestone Avenue and Fairview Street.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on this?
No.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries.
Jim.
And John
And I
seconded.
second it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Appreciate all your help on this. Yeah, Ryan showed me the pictures of the flooding last week, and it was pretty significant for that resident.
We solved, when those sidewalks were, when they were originally repaired and redone, it solved a significant number of those type of issues. There was one house that sits down in one of the valleys there, because the way the roads had come up with milling, the water was flowing over the old sidewalks. At one point, there was almost like a board to go from the staircase to the ground, because it was like a moat around the house. So it was, it's gotten better, so it's good that we're able to fix these last couple of areas.
You're talking about water quite a bit tonight. huh?
I know.
Yes, we are.
And it's
We
gonna
got too
pour
much and too
tomorrow.
little, all in the same,
All right, so with that, we'll move on to item E under new business, which is refunds of excess payments. So we have a few tonight.
Make a motion for a refund of excess payment for Vault Trust, $237.57, and $326.61.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries.
Motion for a refund of excess payment, Alyssa Seth C. Amendola, $2.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries.
Motion for a refund of excess payment, Toyota Lease Trust, $461.67, $509.23, $256.27, $399.48, $199.95, and $284.02.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries.
Motion for a refund of excess payment, Hyundai Lease Titling Trust, $818.79.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Great, thank you. Thank you, Bobby. All right, we'll move on to item 9, status and committee reports. I only have a couple updates, small updates for you this evening. I know we had a long meeting on the proposed school facilities plan with the Board of Education last night. I'd encourage anyone who may be watching, who hasn't seen that yet, and who is wondering what we may be doing as far as the school facilities plan, to watch that meeting. I think there was a lot of great questions asked, there was a lot of great dialogue, and so I think that it's important that we keep that on people's minds, because no matter how much we advertise this, no matter how much we try to get the word out, I guarantee that we'll be seeing comments in November if there's a question on the ballot, a referendum question of, where did this come from? I haven't heard about this. And so I really want to avoid that, but, because I saw some comments about the budget, I think, yesterday, saying we had a budget vote on Monday, and I don't know how much more we could do to get the word out, but every year. So other things to mention is next Thursday is the next planning and zoning public hearing on Brainerd Place. That's the 23rd, so I just want to put that on everyone's radar, 6 o'clock, again, in the Portland High School auditorium. So I'm sure that will be well attended, like the one last week. I heard from our friends at Birdon Boat Marina this week, and they have been doing some really exciting work. I mean, their facility is humming right now. They have at least, I want to say, 6 of the cutters just on the production floor, and they're working on them, and they're churning them out now. And they're really, really ramped up. Their new facility has been completed, and they're using that space. And so it's really great to see this business come in and take up shop and really provide not to the local economy, but to the national economy as well. And so they have invited us on a boat ride in June. So I don't know, I wanted to invite you all to attend. I figured it would be pretty neat for the board to go down and see this all in action. I think they may have some things planned for the future too. So possible expansion, I don't know yet. But if you guys would like, I can work on some potential dates, and
Yeah.
I guess what I'll do is I'll send you some emails and we'll figure out what dates might work for everyone. But I want to thank Burton for their hospitality, and I'm looking forward to getting down there and seeing what they've been up to. And the other thing I wanted to mention is Quarry Day is June 8th, and we will be having a groundbreaking on the Nordic Spa facility at Quarry Day. And so Quarry Day, I encourage everyone to attend anyway, but we also have a pretty cool reason on top of that to attend, and that's the groundbreaking of this Nordic Spa facility that pretty much everybody I talk to is very excited about. So
Cut rate on facials, or?
I will keep you posted, John. I don't know. Mother's Day was just the other day, so you missed
Yeah,
more.
I missed that opportunity, right?
But next year. All right, I think that's it for me. I already did the Job's Pond update, so.
All right, I have a couple of things. So Parks and Recreation, again, they're still on track for the Fall Festival on September 28th. Not a whole lot more on that. They just had some general discussion. They did talk about the permit. They basically, I mentioned last time that they were working on the field and facility rental policy. They got through some of the changes that were requested in the previous, had been incorporated. They were comfortable, so their next basically the next step is now they're going to send it to the attorneys for review, and then at some point it will be coming to us for our review, comment, and approval. And then probably the other one that was interesting was Agalotti Field, looking at the lights. They've had a problem over there with the switch is basically defective at this point. It's very loose, and so they can't use the lights anymore. So they were talking about a couple of different things, whether or not they just address the specific issue with the switch, and which is one price, one cost, and then there was another proposal which would have been more money, but would have been looking at using and basically putting some LED in. They, as a group, kind of decided that the LED option was probably a little too much to try to do right now, but they were very interested in moving forward, I think, with fixing the switch and being able to get it so that it's at least usable, even with the current older lights.
Jim, how much do they use that field when it's lit?
When it's lit, they usually have a few nights that they'll use it for like the soccer events, and then there's some of the flag football. I think there's a half a dozen nights from a town usage standpoint, and then obviously some of the football is looking to be able to use it more, because if you do anything, you have practices. So if you want to be able to use it in the fall, it gets dark early, and they would need to have it for practices. So that's kind of what they're talking about. So the usage wasn't heavy enough, based on the discussion they had, to really justify a lot of money to go to the LEDs, right? The savings isn't there. Yeah, exactly right. But in terms of getting the switch fixed, which would also mean fixing some of the infrastructure coming in that's older, and they're looking at the breaker panel and things like that, they got a cost for that, which was, I think, the price that they talked about was $9,400. So it wasn't, it was significantly less than looking at the LEDs. So. Water and sewer, as we spent the first half of our meeting talking about it, one of the biggest topics was in the director's report was talking exactly about the issues we talked about earlier. and looking at those, and looking at the numbers, and like I said, the numbers were stark in terms of, the numbers are pretty stark in terms of us moving forward without any potential MDC increase. Factoring in a likely MDC increase, the numbers get even more stark, as we heard tonight. The water system, the other portions of this were, let's see, the Russell Ave, the repave, I guess, is gonna start on Monday, next Monday. So that's moving along now that that work's complete. High Street is still in design, and they're working on a solution for Dogwood. There's still an evaluation going on there, where there was a leak and some undermining of one of the adjacent roadways, so. In terms of sewer, Clarifier 2 is online. I think last time I had said that they were getting ready to do testing, so that's now online. And the work on Clarifier 1 is in progress. That's going much better than Clarifier 2, because they're not dealing with the cold weather and the tenting and all the other issues that they have. CoAv, the pump station, they're still waiting. Apparently some of the materials are still 2 months out. So they're having a hard time getting a hold of the pumps. And the other thing that they are looking at, this is a longer term, longer lead project, is going to be to redesign the blower system so that we'll be able to bring sort of the other half of the plant more efficiently online down at the sewer plant. Right now, we're about 600,000 gallons is our capacity. We can get back up to the 1.2 million once we have a better blower system in place there, so.
I think we have to do that no matter what because of Brainerd Place, right, Ryan? Yeah.
Yeah.
So no matter.
Long-term, we're gonna be getting up against that 600. I think we were still under the capacity, we were still there, we were still okay. But it's getting up where you don't have a ton of margin, so.
And the spot, too. I mean, we're.
That's why, again, long-term, we're gonna have to look at doing them.
Great.
That's really, those were the big hitters.
Thank you,
So,
Jim.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have any status in committee?
No, my last Board of Ed meeting, I sent my regrets to the chair. We were down welcoming a new grandchild in Virginia, so I got to miss that.
Congratulations.
I watched the grandchild, I just didn't get to see the meeting, but I think I made the right choice.
Yeah. You can always watch it on
That's right.
YouTube.
That's right.
All right, if there's no other status in committee reports, we'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to comment? All right, we'll move on to the chat. I do see a question here from Don Goen. Don had asked, will the residents' well capacity in the surrounding neighborhood be affected, and will that effect reduce the amount of water that will be available to them? I think the answer to that is no, but we'll get clarification on that at a later date. Is there anyone else online who wishes to comment? Okay, yeah, Ryan says no. All right, so we'll move on then to Board of Selectmen, general and formal discussion.
I just have two quick reminders. One is next weekend, our Memorial Day Parade.
Thank you.
Starting noon on May 26th on Sunday. Should be good.
Noon, 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
Lineup starts, ask
A little bit
everybody to
earlier,
start coming
yeah.
early.
1:30.
Yeah. 2 o'clock, so please come. And then a week from then, on June 1st, will be our run-a-thon. So,
Who here on the board is planning on?
Bobby said
walking
yes already.
in the
I
parade?
might be doing something with my brother and nephew. I'll get in touch with them, so. if
Okay.
I am, so.
Are you around for the parade?
Oh, the parade? No, I won't be. I'm
Okay.
out of state.
I should be around.
Okay. Greg, you guys around
I'm
for the
Mark.
parade?
Yeah, I've got a family thing I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to work around it.
Okay. Well, hope to see, those of you who can make it there. And thank you. And we got the run-a-thon coming up too, so awesome. What else we got for general and formal discussion?
I'd like to make a suggestion for a future agenda item. We've obviously been to a lot of meetings recently where business development in Portland has been discussed and the need to draw good businesses into town. I'm wondering if at some future date, we could have a discussion of what our process is in town right now for reaching out to businesses and what our approach is. Whether we need to think about making that a more formalized process with somebody that would do that. Because there's a lot of, when we got the Waverly Building filled and some other larger businesses in town, I think it would behoove us to just better understand how the process works and see if we can do it any better.
Sure, yeah, definitely. And I think we've had a lot of success with economic development as of late, but yeah, we're definitely looking for ways
I guess
to.
it just shined a light listening to some of the statements about the lack of desire for businesses to come to town, and I don't believe it, but I'd like to talk about it.
It's tough. I mean, it is tough, because I can't say, we have hurdles. The bridge for us is a hindrance, and you speak with people who live in Middletown, and they don't come over the bridge to Portland. And a lot of people do their shopping outside of Portland, and those are things that I think we're working to change.
Yeah.
But I think it takes time, and I think we're on the right track. But that's why places like Brainerd Place are so important, because they can potentially be the catalyst for that economic development that we do need in town. And so, but yeah, I think, are you suggesting we should have a economic development person that is?
I'd be interested. I mean, in listening to the Brainerd Place presentations, I was having a discussion with another person that's up there in age like me, remembering Main Street 50 years ago. And I mean, I understand that Main Street 50 years ago in Middletown is entirely different now too, but you had a lot of businesses, and there was a time back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s when our industrial park under the bridge was very active with a lot of quality businesses. And was it Pete Wilsey, when he called in,
Yeah.
he spoke volumes when he talked about how COVID has changed the approach of a lot of people for purchasing. However, I still think that there are businesses out there that need a place to set up, that maybe we just need to.
Well, that's the thing, is we always wait for someone to come to us. We
That-
don't go out
That's
and
exactly
try
what
to
I'm
get
saying.
people.
That's
Yeah.
not necessarily true.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it
you
is.
gotta look at reality too. How many of us in this room were on Amazon this week buying something, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So multiply that. I mean, it's the reality.
I
is
guess what I was thinking,
retail.
that's retail.
Right.
But I'm also thinking, there was a time when under the bridge, you had Sealflex and Can-Do Manufacturing, you had a lot of small businesses.
Right.
That, I'm saying there aren't that many out there probably now, but there's no reason why we couldn't be out there soliciting them to come.
Well, most of the companies in town got bought by bigger companies.
Right.
And moved out of town or out of state even.
Right.
Right.
Stone
Can-Do,
Container.
Stone,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can-Do,
Yeah.
Steel Flags.
I will say that if you look at the top taxpayers in town on the grand list just the past couple of years, there's a lot of changing of who has come into town. We have Bird On, top taxpayer.
That was a coup,
Bird
but I
on.
mean, it'd be nice to do some more of that.
Well, the spa is more of that.
Yeah.
The spa is more of that.
Yeah,
Brainerd
spa's
Place
pretty
is more of that. Brainerd Place is the #1 taxpayer in the town right now and that's just today.
And they're not
So,
even
and they're not
done.
even,
Right.
they may only be half done, unfortunately. So these are the things that we need to, I don't know.
I just think it would behoove us to better understand and maybe tweak a process to help us out.
I would just say, as far as economic development goes, to me, it feels like the wind is at our back right now. We've seen more economic.
Like John said, we should take advantage of it and be proactive and
Yeah.
go after people.
But that's why we need water and sewer, and that's where
Oh, yeah.
the plan
Yeah.
comes in,
Right.
because
It's-
it's hard to expand if we don't have that
Right.
water and
Infrastructure's
sewer
not in place.
infrastructure in place,
Right.
and that's what we've seen.
It's a
from
catch-22, where,
Yeah.
we need the money for the infrastructure for the business,
Just got to do it all.
I mean,
but we just gotta do it.
businesses.
We just gotta step off
Right.
the, like.
I mean, we don't even have enough power.
Just do it.
Yeah. Well, that's another problem,
Right.
and I just had a call with Eversource yesterday in regards to power and what, there's some challenges ahead with
Right.
Eversource and what may happen. And so infrastructure-wise, there may be some challenges. And I don't want to get into it now, but we're working to solve them.
There you go.
All right, good point, John, and we can definitely talk about that. Anyone else?
I have a couple quick things. Where do we stand on turning the old fire truck over to the members?
Everything has been paused due to Job's Pond, due to Brainerd Place.
Okay.
The fire truck is on hold until we get the more pressing matters resolved.
Okay, what's the status on engine 3?
It is in development. It's being made. Why?
Well, no, are we still on schedule for the same
Yeah, but
delivery?
it's not coming until 2025. So everything is on track for delivery next year, but it's just going to take.
Engine 2 or engine 3? Because engine 3, I thought we were getting this summer.
Oh, excuse me, you're right, yeah.
That's what-
Yeah. Actually, I have not heard an update on engine 3, so let me get an update for you for the next meeting on
'Cause I believe it was June or July that they were expecting.
it. Was June, I think, yeah.
You know,
I'll reach out to Chief.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, or-
wonderful.
yeah. Good question on
And where do we stand on auctioning excess town equipment?
that. We have been auctioning excess town
Okay.
equipment. We do
Well, I know
that.
we talked about it in the past.
Oh, yeah, no, we've been doing it, and actually, I forget what it was, but something came in very favorably for us. So we continue to do that. I know Tom is pretty good with that. I know Bill works on the auctions as well. He's been doing a great job. And so we continually auction off things, and we've been doing a lot of it recently.
Okay. Does that all go back into the, like, general fund, or does that put aside for anything?
Goes into the general fund, yeah.
Okay. That's it, I'll save more. I know Sean's begging to get out of here.
Oh, you can
Happy
keep
to
going.
answer.
I'm fine now, no, I'm fine.
No,
Dairy
I'm
Queen
sorry.
still has a little time. We're-
Still got
I'm good.
time. And then,
Give me, I'll ask the rest of them.
and I don't know if anybody, I do want to address Joe Engel's comment at the beginning of the meeting. Is that something you guys want me to explore, pricing on alternative?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Definitely.
100%.
Okay.
You can go with natural, you might as well find out what the price is.
Yeah, definitely. And as Rich said, if we do move forward with the well at the Portland
We'd have to do
Recreational
that.
Complex.
You'll have to know for that.
Makes it
anyway.
even
You'll
more
have to know for
relevant.
that.
Yeah.
So, all right, I will do some research on that. Thank you. All right, anything else?
I'm good.
Thought you had some things.
Well, I did, but I want to end the meeting on a net positive note, Ryan. How's that? All right.
Thank you, Sean. All right, so then under follow-up items, I don't have anything this evening, so I'll entertain a motion to
I
adjourn.
make a motion.
I'll
to
second
adjourn.
that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, Joe.
Right.
Thanks, Joe.
Ryan.
Geez, I was.